We shall propose further cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control.
That you could actually spray sulfuric acid in the stratosphere 20 kilometers over our head and use that to stop the planet warming up in a kind of ugly tech fix.
You can spray something into the atmosphere to change. Okay,
spray pollution into the atmosphere to stop it warming.
At least 18 reported tornadoes in 3 states overnight, and more than 100 severe weather reports.
Overnight, twister after twister taking aim at the heartland.
Holy cow.
You can see this massive funnel cloud making its way across that field. In Oklahoma, this reported tornado touching down. And check out the ominous Kansas sky overnight, lightning revealing numerous funnel cloud.
Okay, so how, again, I interrupt you slightly there. How does it work? How many planes are we talking about here? How do you do this?
So let's say you wanted to stop it warming in 2020. You'd start with a fleet of just 2 or 3 kind of modified business jets. You'd put, say, 20,000 tons of sulfuric acid into the stratosphere every year, and each year you have to put a little more, and this doesn't, in the long run, mean that you can forget about cutting emissions. We will need to rein in emissions.
We'll get to it eventually, yeah.
But it does.
But in the meantime, we're shrouding the Earth in sulfuric acid.
Most of Oklahoma under a state of emergency tonight. High wind and severe drought are creating blowtorch conditions. At least 1 person has died. More than 200,000 acres have burned. 1,400 people have been forced from their homes.
The largest fire burning is the Ray Fire in Dewey County. That fire is 28 miles long and 7 miles wide.
Western Oklahoma is on fire. A state of emergency declared in more than 50 counties. The smoky smell detected in neighboring states.
The wind's horrible. The only thing that we've had is cooler temperatures, and that hasn't affected the fire conditions at all.
The reprieve will be short-lived. Temperatures are forecast to soar into the 90s this week, potentially whipping up Oklahoma's already deadly wildfire.
Blanketing the Earth in sulfuric acid, because I'm all for it. This is the all-chocolate dinner. I still get to have my CO2, and I just need to spray sulfuric acid.
Right?
All over the Earth.
Right question. But we put 50 million tons of sulfuric acid in the air now. Kills 1 million people a year worldwide.
Okay, and that's
so
good or bad?
It's terrible.
But it'll be better if we put more in.
We're talking about 1% of that, a tiny fraction of that. So we should reduce that sulfuric acid.
So if it kills 1 million people and we're only doing 1% more, we're just killing 10,000 more people.
You can do math.
Okay.
But that's, so killing people is not the objective here.
Killing people, not the objective. I just wanted to be clear. All right.
Red tide discovered in the waters off 2 popular Collier County beaches. The latest round of testing uncovered the high levels of the harmful algae near Barefoot and Vanderbilt beaches.
It's causing dead fish to wash ashore, many still littering the stand there.
Well, the deadly effect of red tide on fish is still very present out here on Vanderbilt Beach. They are all over the place, but it's not just fish taking a hit tonight. A wildlife veterinarian tells me that there are birds eating these fish that are impacted by red tide and then getting sick. Red tide is back with a vengeance at Collier County beaches.
This is definitely the longest one I've ever remembered.
The last tests from Thursday found high levels of red tide in the water near Barefoot and Vanderbilt beaches. Tests conducted earlier in the week found almost no sign of the harmful algae.
It seems that it's been fairly consistent for months now.
Joanna Fitzgerald is a wildlife veterinarian. She says all of these birds here almost died after eating fish contaminated with red tide toxins.
They come in and they can't even blink. It's a full body paresis, so they can't move.
And I'll read you the quote because it's an important one, and it comes from the Secretary of Defense, William Cohen, and it was at a DoD news briefing, April 27th, 1997. It was on a conference of on international terrorism, international terrorism and weapons of mass destruction. Now, this is 4 years before 9/11, and this was in the DoD news briefing that followed. And what he said, and I quote, "Others are engaging even in an eco-type of terrorism whereby they can alter climates, set off earthquakes and volcanoes remotely through the use of electromagnetic waves," unquote. Now, that's a powerful statement for a seated Secretary of Defense to make.
The Ring of Fire has sparked earthquakes and volcanic eruptions.
A volcano in southwestern Japan has erupted after 250 years of silence. And meteorological agency officials are telling people to stay away from Mount Ioyama.
The eruption of a volcano on Hawaii's largest island has forced the evacuation of 1,700 residents.
A witness described the flowing magma as a curtain of fire. Another said the eruption sounded like a jet engine.
I ran in, I grabbed the dogs, threw them in a crate, put them in the car. We moved from California to get away from forest fires. Welcome to paradise.
In Hawaii, over 450 earthquakes in 24 hours and spewing lava.
Volcanic eruptions spewing molten rock, ash, and toxic gases onto Hawaii's Big Island. The eruption stemming from a series of cracks in Pu'u'o'o's rift zone, miles from the Kilauea volcano. Video from earlier this week shows walls of smoke billowing as the vent on Pu'u'o'o collapses, leaving behind a red, rocky surface similar to that of Mars, with gaping holes giving us a glimpse of the orange liquid magma smoldering below.
Another example is the array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do. This process is also relatively inexpensive. The National Research Council estimates that a fully deployed SAI program would cost about $10 billion yearly. On the geopolitical side, the technology's potential to alter weather patterns and benefit certain regions of the world at the expense of other regions could trigger sharp opposition by some nations.
Been following a story in Girard about some loud booms that some people believe are explosions in the city.
A neighbor last night told us it's been going on for years in the neighborhood just off Route 422 on Emma Street and also on Morris Avenue.
For years now, people in Girard right around I-80 say they hear and feel explosions, but the one they felt Wednesday took it to another level.
It sounded like a big bomb going off. The floor actually shook. I was laying on the couch and it shook. The roof felt like it was going to come down on us.
Some of her neighbors have cracks in their foundations, crumbling exteriors, and they're wondering if it might be related. Superior Auto Body's right on the corner of Emma Street and 422, and Jared Latone says it happens on average a couple times a week.
It's kind of now just, oh, there's another one. All right, it happened again. We don't know what it is. We can guess and say we think it's the gas tanks from the cars across the street, but we really don't know.
So, at least for now, the mystery continues, leaving a whole neighborhood on shaky ground.
Can you just do it for part of the planet?
Pretty much the whole planet.
No, but could you? Could you just just make things better for the United States?
Very hard to do. It seems that this is mostly global. But the big fear is that one country will want it one way and one the other, like two frat boys arguing over the thermostat. And in many ways, the biggest fear here, well, we have no idea how to actually agree about how to control the planet's thermostat.
What happens to the sulfuric acid after it's sprayed? Does it just stay up there?
No, it rains down.
Okay.
But as I said, it rains down.
Okay.
It's a tiny addition to what we're already doing.
So in the end, pollution saved them all. We owe pollution, we owe acid rain an apology, is what you're saying.
A totally imperfect technical fix.
Okay.
It would have risks. It wouldn't get us out of the long-run need to stop polluting, but it might actually save people and be useful.
You ever look at those planes up there? They have contrails behind them. Maybe all those planes with the contrails, maybe they're actually spraying chemicals into the atmosphere right now and Uncle Sam isn't telling us.
Seems extremely unlikely.
That the United States is not telling something to its citizens? That seems extremely likely to me. Read the newspaper.
learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right. Lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning. CBS This Morning contributor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City College of New York. Professor, nice to see you. Extraordinary seeing Al Gore and Bill Clinton there together with Charlie, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, they did not get into this discussion,
No.
though. But it is fascinating. I mean, lasers, really, to change the weather?
That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. This is potentially a game changer.
But this is experimental.
It's experimental. However, in the laboratory so far it works. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning. Go ahead.
Well, this fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
Inconclusive. Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War, to wash out the Viet Cong. Governments have been playing with this thing.
Alleged to.
Alleged to, right.
Yeah.
Now, we realize that for decades now, these governments have been alleged to have experimented with weather control, but nothing conclusive. This time we're bringing in the laws of physics rather than simply waving our hands and uttering mumbo jumbo. We're actually using trillion-watt lasers now. And in the laboratory, sure enough, they precipitate rain out of water vapor. Sure enough, you can actually bring down electricity down the beam.
So what does it mean for drought areas that need to have rain for crops, and if they don't have them, there's the consequences of famine?
Well, the bad news is if it's a clear blue sky, it's not going to do anything at all, because it only takes water vapor that's already in the air and condenses it. However, for floods, for agriculture, farmers, for people planning wedding parties, football games, you name it, outdoor events and agriculture and flooding and even hurricanes, all of them could be subject to weather modification.
Tonight, investigators are trying to solve a bizarre mystery in Flagler County.
A number of people say they felt the ground shake today. Several people around the Palm Coast area called in to report it. And people in the Daytona North area, as well as in Deltona and as far north as St. Augustine, say they felt it too. Channel 9's Jason Allen is live in Flagler County, and Jason, some worried it was an earthquake.
The Emergency Management Office has been on the phone here all day trying to figure this out. This was not a boom, an audible boom, at least not as described to us, but it was more of an actual shaking, buildings shaking. In fact, a dispatcher here at the county actually felt it happen.
I live alone, I'm blind, and a while ago the house was shaking. Did you happen to know what?
I'm not sure. We're actually getting quite a few calls about it now. We're having someone check it out, okay?
That 911 call was one of about a dozen calls that poured into Flagler County about 9:30 Friday morning. An unexplained phenomenon described as everything from a low rumble to a window-shaking movement rattled residents from St. Augustine to Palm Coast.
Around rumbled and the building rumbled, and definitely abnormal for here.
We found at least two people who have experienced sonic booms and earthquakes from time spent in California.
That's what it felt like. It definitely felt like an earthquake.
Enough to make you look toward the ocean and go, okay, what's next? Tsunami?
5/21/2011. It's right now 4:47 a.m. on a Saturday morning. This noise has been going on since like 3 o'clock, off and on. I don't know what the hell that is. You see the moon up there shining bright. That noise.
this shit out. Listen to that. That is fucking crazy.
Where's that from?
I don't know. Sounds like a giant flame or something. I'm gonna walk across the street.
On this Thursday, we had a little cloud cover in the morning hours, a couple of showers as well, but nothing like what they're getting in the eastern half of the U.S. As you can see, we've got rain and snow stretching from the Great Lakes all the way down to Florida, at times creating some major problems. This is the same line of action that blew trucks off the freeways yesterday in Iowa, created some downed trees. We had hail from pea to golf ball size throughout much of the upper Midwest Plains states, and of course it's still going on. Our fear is that rain in New England could create flooding issues yet again for folks in Maine, New Jersey, for example, perhaps all the way down to the Carolinas. Here in the West, we're seeing a brief break, but there is a chance for more showers coming our way by the weekend. Now, tomorrow it should be dry, but cooler than normal, and tonight it's going to be cold enough that we might actually see some frost issues throughout the region. So folks in the orchard industry, even backyard gardeners, should take care of their plants. You can see scattered showers still showing up on the Pacific Northwest radar throughout the region. The heaviest, and of course, well to our north. Here in Southern Oregon and Northern California, we've got a bit of an unusual situation. Now, this first portion of the radar cycle, fairly bland and typical, but then you see these bands of very distinct cloud cover moving into the region. That is not rain, that is not snow. Believe it or not, military aircraft flying through the region is dropping chaff. Small bits of aluminum, sometimes it's made of plastic, or even metallicized paper products, but it's used as an anti-radar issue, and obviously they're up there practicing. Now, they won't confirm that, but I was in the Marine Corps for many years, and I'll tell you right now, that's what it is. 50 in Medford right now, 48.
FEMA Administrator Brock Long joins us now from Washington, D.C. with the latest on the federal government's response. Good morning, Administrator. Let me ask you, this hurricane is strong and it is big, and I was looking at some of the data that less than 50% of the people under mandatory evacuation orders actually heed that call. Is this a life-threatening storm?
Yes, ma'am, it is. It's not a question of if Florence is going to impact the Carolinas and Virginia. It's going to, and it's going to be a devastating storm. This reminds me, I'm a North Carolina native. I grew up in Newton, North Carolina in 1989. Hurricane Hugo, the last landfalling Category 4 storm into the Carolinas, came right over my house. We were out of power for 10 days. I was out of school, if I remember, 2 weeks. And so this storm is setting up to be very similar to that one. So we're really hoping that people will heed the governor's warnings in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia today, and make sure that you're taking proper precautions to get out of the storm surge areas and into facilities that can withstand the winds.
And then the National Hurricane Center is warning that this storm is going to linger once it hits. How does that affect FEMA's response?
Yes, ma'am. So this is going to be a marathon event. This is not going to be a quick hit across the coast. And let's keep in mind that hurricanes can impact the entire states. And we're looking at not only coastal impacts from Cat 4 storm surge and high winds making landfall, but as this system comes inland, it's projected to stall out, which means copious amounts of rainfall through the Carolinas into Virginia, as well as many of the mid-Atlantic states. So we're positioning from basically South Carolina to Delaware as we speak to be able to support our state partners.
And Administrator Long, there's also the fact that this area has been soaked so far this year. How does that affect things like trees weakening and falling, stuff that people might not recognize when they think of a hurricane?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Unfortunately, the remnants of Gordon passed through this weekend, the mid-Atlantic states, dropping a lot of rainfall, which saturates the rivers. So the question is, how much more rainfall can these rivers handle? And right now, you're seeing forecast of 30 inches or greater. I'm truly worried about North Carolina, Virginia, particularly the central and western portions of those states that haven't seen this type of rainfall in a long time.
See, many people got smacked last year, Brock, as you know, with Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Maria. What lessons did you all learn from that?
Well, I think the nation learned a lot. It takes more than FEMA to appropriately respond and recover. And emergency management is like a chair with 4 legs. It takes the federal government, that's one leg. It takes the state and local government, that's the other leg. It takes the private sector and non-governmental organizations, that's the third leg. And then it takes you, the citizen, as the fourth leg. And when all 4 of those legs go into a response and recovery, the chair's stable. Emergency management does its job collectively. It's a whole community event. One of the things I like to remind citizens is that citizens are the true first responder for any small emergency to the large disaster, and we depend on people being prepared, and we don't have a real culture of preparedness in this country that we got to work on.
And again, you say people take this very seriously.
Yes, please take it.
Yes.
Yeah, look, this is a Cat 4 storm, potentially a Cat 5. At FEMA, we always plan for 1 category higher. This is nothing to play with. You're going to see massive amounts of storm surge along the coast, which is the primary driver of evacuations. And then this system is going to come in and cause devastating inland floods statewide across South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia.
Well, Administrator Brock Long, we thank you and everyone at FEMA for all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Chemtrails are a term for stratospheric aerosol injections, otherwise known as geoengineering. These white lines that are stretched across the beautiful blue sky have long been mistaken as simple contrails, which are water vapor left behind from airplanes, but they are clearly different. For instance, when observing a contrail, one will notice that the white line disappears or fades away after a couple of minutes, but chemtrails have a much more different effect. When observing a chemtrail, one will see that not only does the white line remain in the sky for hours on end, but the color of the sky will actually change to a milky hazy color, or bizarre nasty looking clouds will form right where that beautiful blue sky used to be. Geoengineering and weather manipulation is nothing new, but has been around for over 150 years. Weather modification has been something that the United States and many other governments have been working on for years, including Project Storm Fury, which is a US project that focused on controlling the storm paths of hurricanes. Since geoengineering and weather modification goes back so far, it is clear what the agenda is for weather manipulation. Weather modification dates at least back to the 1830s, when the proposals of American meteorologist James Pollard Espy to stimulate rain by controlled forest burning led to him becoming feted as the Storm King. More recently, the US Project Storm Fury sought for 2 decades to modify the paths of hurricanes through seeding them with silver iodide. The Royal Society, Geoengineering the Climate. HAARP, or High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, has been known for its testing with geoengineering. Geoengineering is the alteration or manipulation of the weather. HAARP was a facility that used ionospheric heaters to change the weather. Although we are told that HAARP shut down years ago, there are many more facilities just like this all over the world. For instance, there's the Sura Ionospheric Heating Facility in Russia, the High Power Auroral Stimulation Observatory, or HIPAS, in Fairbanks, Alaska, the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, and ISCAT, which operates many facilities across the world stemming from Sweden. David Icke once said, "We now know that the ability to relocate weather systems with electromagnetic weapons and skies seeded with conductive aerosols is the key to the creation of artificial global warming." Global warming is a lie created specifically by the Club of Rome. The propaganda portrayed by the mainstream media about global warming is that the population must pay carbon taxes to Al Gore, as if they would use that money to prevent the Earth from rapidly heating. HAARP controlling the weather is a powerful weapon that can be and will be utilized by the powers ruling our world. By controlling weather, governments can cause fake natural disasters and have massive impacts on agriculture and growing food by changing the climate. Using false disasters would be a great way to open FEMA camps and begin full-phase New World Order with everyone enslaved. Some declassified documents from the US government detail injecting nanofibers and mechanized dust into the air. These nanofibers are being sprayed into the air and are found in chemtrail samples. Biometric Application Programming Interfaces, or bioappies are sprayed onto people through nanobots, released through chemtrails, making it easier to manipulate and control the minds of humans. One of the most sinister and difficult to fathom conspiracy theories I've ever come across posits that nanobots are being sprayed on us all to install bioappies, biometric application programming interfaces, which basically allow for the mental and emotional remote control of humanity. These nanofibers, which have already been found in several chemtrail samples and linked to Morgellons disease, work by attaching themselves to neurons or synapses and self-replicating until they have artificially encapsulated and rewired your brain. Eric Dubé, Atlanteanconspiracy.com. There have been declassified government documents proving the existence of chemtrails, yet it is still considered a crazy conspiracy theory. Yes, of course. I'm crazy for reading into government documents talking about injecting the air with poison. One document released by NASA in 2001 speaks of spraying small dust into the air, which is inhaled into the lungs. This is described as a new use of weaponry, which is totally legal. It says that this form of advanced warfare will take place at around 2025, but could it be happening before then? This form of weaponry could be being used right now by the military or secret projects. This document was released in 2001, and it's been over 15 years. This plan to use warfare by emitting chemicals into the air through spraying has been underway for a long time, and I do not doubt that this not only has been developed, but it is most likely what is being sprayed in chemtrails. Microdust weaponry, a mechanical analog to micron-sized mechanized dust, which is distributed as an aerosol and inhaled into the lungs. Dust mechanically bores into lung tissue and executes various pathological missions. A wholly new class of weaponry, which is legal. Dennis M. Bushnell, a NASA employee, Future Strategic Issues, Future Warfare, circa 2025. Chemtrails are indeed real, and geoengineering has been taking place for years and is an ongoing reality. Chemtrails are just a small fraction of what is being done to the populations of the world. Whether or not we are being sprayed for mind control or weather modification, we do know that the skies above our heads are being sprayed with chemicals.
Just a question, do you know what is a chemtrail?
The what?
A chemtrail.
I do know what a chemtrail is.
Yeah, and is it true?
Well, there's a big debate.
No, but do you believe it? I don't know.
Well, I don't have enough information for that.
Okay. Yeah, but because I saw a lot of videos on the internet, and it really looks believable.
Well, it's arguable both ways, I think.
Yeah?
Depends on which side you're on, but...
Yeah. But what is your personal opinion of it?
I think there's part of truth.
Part of truth, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we should investigate this, because when it's true, imagine so many people, they suffer of this.
Yeah, it's a necessary evil, as you would say.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
Have a good day, sir.
You too. Thank you.
Aircraft making a condensation trail is very similar in many ways to when you go outside on a cold day and exhale. You create a condensation trail. That little cloud is a condensation trail. Now, if you take a 2-mile walk on a cold day and you can turn around and you can see your condensation trail tracking all the way back for 2 miles. That's how crazy it is to think that what we're looking in the sky is actually condensation trails.
The contrails, not the chemical, the contrails occur because of cold air, minus 30. It takes high altitude, around 30,000 feet plus. There's carbon dioxide and water vapor in that exhaust. That turns to ice crystals, and that's what you see, the white stream behind it. Those white crystals of ice warm up, dissolve, and the smoke goes away. And it never lasts more than a minute. What we're seeing now, and I first could not believe it, and I started looking at the skies, and these are not normal, they're not natural, There's something going on. I don't know who it is or why they're doing it. All I can testify is it's not natural and it's not normal. It's got to be some outside influence doing that. Thank you.
I'm here to give you testimony that chemtrails, they're not contrails, are indeed real. They're spraying almost every day. I watch the clouds and watch the spraying program going on. I want to tell you that we're in very great danger from the pollution that's coming down over us. And we've been led astray by the military-industrial complex, and they're responsible for the cloud's creation and weather manipulation programs. They're dark operations. That's why they're not out in the media.
I look around and I see people are starting to look up and see this. Many times I've spoken about chemtrails, and I get this blank look on my face. What are you talking about? I'm saying, look up. As a pilot, before I fly, I look up. And so, boy, they're really out there working.
When you look up at the sun and you see a white haze, that is aluminum floating in the air right now, and it's coming from the aircraft.
There's a huge amount of aluminum being found because these sprays have aluminum, strontium, barium, manganese. And there's a lot of argument that aluminum is very common to be found. But aluminum is only common in a bonded form. It's not common in a free form, and we're finding high rates of free aluminum in the soil, which is not natural.
The metal compounds that are being used are environmentally dangerous. We need to be monitoring them. We need to be testing them.
Okay, these previous guys, I've watched exactly what they do, and yes, they are correct. I've seen exactly the same stuff, so ditto marks on those. You want some figures? Okay, latest water test, tested the rain. 13,100 micrograms per liter of aluminum in the rain in 2013. Normally, it should be 0. So 13,100 is pretty damn much, folks. It used to be 0, then it was 100s in the 2000s, and then since 2010, it's into the 1,000s and the latest 13,100. In the snow on Mount Shasta, pristine Mount Shasta, 61,000 micrograms per liter, 4 times the amount that is found in the soil up there. Where in the hell is this stuff coming from if it's not coming from the soil?
We have clouds in the sky we've never seen before. Almost every day I'm seeing clouds I've never seen before. And NASA has been even named a few of these new clouds. It's really interesting, but NASA is a corporation. I want you to know that.
NASA has also conducted a research program in what they call metallized fuels. We're actually putting aluminum oxide right in the fuel because it has 2 atoms of aluminum and 3 atoms of oxygen. So during the combustion process, it releases all that oxygen and dramatically increases efficiency, but it leaves the aluminum in the air.
Don't worry if you can't hear what I'm saying. I couldn't even hear myself. This is the loudest sound you could possibly conceive. And, as it turns out, the cleanest. Now, the most amazing thing is that that cloud up there, which was generated by the engine, is just a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen. It's water vapor. And in about an hour's time, someone in Mississippi is going to get wet washing. It will actually rain. I told you! It's raining! That's unbelievable! Oh. NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather. NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather.
I'm gonna make a 360. Look at this. Look at this. That's southwest. That's southwest. United? No. Sorry to inform you, these are not commercial airlines. NASA's got a website up explaining what they are. They're basically telling us what we already know. The world should be outraged. Look at that. Is that cool? That's all right? No big deal? Yeah, they're just clouds. Clouds that are coming from planes' exhaust? That's not true, but if it was, that's way worse.